Have you ever looked in the mirror and, just for a split second, failed to recognize the person staring back? Or have you ever felt like a stranger inside your own body, a ghost operating a machine you no longer understand? For most of us, that feeling is a fleeting ripple on the surface of our minds. But what if that ripple became a permanent, raging storm? What if your reality, yourself, your entire world, began to dissolve in a way you couldn't control or comprehend? We're used to talking about illnesses of the body, the burning heat of a fever, the sharp agony of a broken bone. These are painful, but they are concrete. Your body is malfunctioning, like a machine with a broken part. But what about when the mind malfunctions? What happens when the issue isn't a broken component, but a corruption in the very operating system that perceives reality, the software that tells you that you are you? Today, we journey deep into the uncanny valley of the human mind, to the unsettling frontiers of consciousness. We are about to explore 5 psychological disorders so exceptionally strange, they sound like they were scripted for a Hollywood thriller. But this is not fiction. This is the waking life of real people, fighting a silent, desperate war inside their own heads, a war for the definition of reality itself. Are you ready? Let's pull back the curtain on the mind's most baffling magic show and witness just how mysterious and how profoundly terrifying human consciousness can be. Number 1. Alien hand syndrome. The enemy within. Imagine this. You are sitting at a table, calmly lifting a cup of coffee with your right hand. Suddenly, your left hand lunges forward and violently slaps the cup, sending scalding liquid flying across the room. You didn't tell it to do that. You didn't want it to do that. In fact, you watched it happen with the same horror as any bystander, because that hand is no longer yours. It has a will of its own. Welcome to the world of alien hand syndrome. This isn't a simple muscle spasm or an involuntary twitch. This is a condition where a person's limb behaves as a separate sentient entity. It performs complex, goal-oriented actions that are completely independent of, and often contrary to, the person's conscious intentions. You might find your alien hand methodically unbuttoning the shirt you just put on. As your conscious self uses one hand to close a window, the alien hand will follow right behind to open it again. In more disturbing cases, the hand has been known to stuff food into the mouth, pinch, slap, and even attempt to choke its owner while they sleep. The person becomes a prisoner in their own body, perpetually locked in a battle with a rebellious part of themselves. They are a puppeteer who has discovered that one of their own puppets is being controlled by a hostile, invisible force, performing a terrifying duel on the stage of their own life. This syndrome is often caused by damage to the brain's corpus callosum, the bundle of nerves that connects the left and right hemispheres. It's as if the communication cable between 2 parts of the brain has been severed, allowing one section to go rogue and act on its own impulses. Tragically, there is no known cure. Patients can only learn to manage their rogue limb, sometimes sitting on it or holding it down to prevent it from chaos. It poses a chilling philosophical question. If your body can act without your consent, then who or what are you? Number 2. Derealization. The world is not real. Have you ever played a virtual reality game? The moment you put on the headset, you're in another universe. But no matter how immersive it is, there's always a part of your mind that knows, this isn't real. Now, imagine you take the headset off, and that feeling doesn't go away. The world you return to feels just as fake as the game you just left. This is the core experience of derealization. The world around you abruptly loses its quality of unrealness. Familiar streets look flat and lifeless, like a poorly rendered video game or a cardboard movie set. The voices of loved ones sound distant and muffled, as if coming from behind a thick, invisible wall. The entire universe becomes a silent film you are forced to watch, and you are nothing but a disconnected spectator, severed from any anchor to reality. Derealization is often paired with a sister condition called depersonalization, which is the feeling of being detached from your own self. You might look at your own hands moving and feel like you're watching a stranger. When the two are combined, the individual is plunged into an ineffable, unspeakable abyss of alienation. You are a disembodied awareness floating through a dreamscape, with no confidence that you exist, and no proof that anything else does either. Up to 75% of people will experience a mild temporary episode of this in their lifetime during moments of extreme stress or fatigue. But for those with the chronic disorder, this is a constant state of being. The cause is often linked to severe trauma. It's as if the brain, facing a reality too painful to process, engages an emergency kill switch. It detaches you from the world to protect you. But this psychological firewall ends up becoming its own kind of prison, locking you out of your own life, forever wandering a world that has lost its soul. Number 3. Dissociative identity disorder. We are legion. You've likely seen it portrayed in movies, a single person who houses multiple, distinct personalities within them. One moment they're a shy child, the next a hardened soldier. While often dramatized, this phenomenon is based on a real and profoundly complex condition, dissociative identity disorder, or DID, once known as multiple personality disorder. An individual with DID experiences the presence of 2 or more distinct identities, or alters. Each alter has its own unique name, memories, tastes, patterns of speech, and even handwriting. One alter might be a gifted painter, while another is terrible at art. One might be allergic to shellfish, while another eats it without issue. More jarringly, these alters take turns controlling the body. When one is out, the original identity and other alters are often completely unaware, experiencing a total memory gap known as lost time. A person might wake up to find themselves in a strange city with no memory of how they got there, wearing clothes they don't recognize, having missed hours, days, or even weeks of their life. The evidence is overwhelming. More than 90% of DID cases are rooted in severe, repetitive childhood trauma. It is believed to be the mind's most extreme survival mechanism. When a child faces unbearable and inescapable abuse, their consciousness may fracture to survive. It creates other versions of the self to hold the traumatic memories and emotions, like shattering a crystal into countless shards to distribute an impact that would have destroyed it whole. The result is not one person, but a complex internal system of alters. Arduous process of trying to piece those broken fragments of the self back together. Number 4. Capgras syndrome. The imposter in My House. Imagine your spouse, the person you have loved for years, walks through the door after work. They have the same face, the same voice, the same laugh. They know every private joke and shared memory. But as you look at them, a cold, unshakable certainty grips you. This person is a fake, a fraud, a perfect, identical duplicate, who has replaced the person you love. This is Capgras syndrome. It is a delusion where an individual becomes convinced that a loved one, or sometimes even a pet, or their own house, has been replaced by an imposter. This belief is absolute. No amount of reasoning, no photographic evidence, no shared memory can persuade them otherwise. Any attempt to prove you are who you say you are is just part of the imposter's cunning deception. The horror of Capgras is that it attacks the very foundation of human connection, trust, and emotional recognition. The person you love most in the world is transformed, in your eyes, into a monstrous, unknown threat. It can lead to paranoia, fear, and in some tragic cases, violence. As the individual tries to expose the doppelganger, the leading theory suggests Capgras is a bizarre disconnection in the brain. The neural pathway that visually recognizes a familiar face is working perfectly fine, but the pathway that connects that visual recognition to the appropriate emotional response, the feeling of warmth, love, and familiarity, has been severed. The brain receives conflicting data. I see my wife, but I don't feel that she is my wife. To resolve this paradox, it creates a terrifying narrative. She must be an imposter. It is a 404 error of the heart, a technical glitch that rewrites a love story into a tale of horror. Number 5. Cotard syndrome. The Walking Dead of all the ways the mind can break, none is perhaps more total, more existentially terrifying than Cotard syndrome. This is a condition where a person holds the delusional belief that they are already dead, that they are rotting away, or that they simply do not exist. And this is not a metaphor. Patients will literally insist their heart has stopped beating, that their organs have decayed, and their blood has turned to dust. As a consequence, they may stop eating because a dead person has no need for food. Some have tried to injure themselves to prove they cannot bleed or feel pain. In one of the most surreal cases on record, a patient admitted himself to a morgue, believing that was where he belonged. This delusion can also manifest as a belief that one has lost their soul, their mind, or all their internal organs, leaving them as an empty walking shell. It is the ego's complete annihilation. While extremely rare, it is often linked to severe depression, schizophrenia, and neurological injuries. One theory posits that it is the ultimate expression of depersonalization. The brain's emotion-generating centers may be so profoundly shut down that the individual experiences a total and complete absence of any feeling. No joy, no sadness, no pain, no anything. Faced with this bottomless inner void, the mind scrambles for an explanation, and can only arrive at one conclusion that fits the sensory data. I must be dead. Cotard syndrome is the ultimate refutation of Descartes' famous insight, I think, therefore I am. For these individuals, their very ability to think paradoxically leads them to the absolute conviction, I think, therefore I am not, an alien hand, a fake world, a fractured self, an imposter lover, a belief in one's own death. These are not just bizarre medical curiosities, they are profound, living thought experiments, each one revealing just how fragile our grip on normalcy truly is. They show us that the unified self and the stable reality we take for granted are not givens. They are delicate masterpieces, actively and continuously constructed by the 3-pound universe inside our skulls. The philosopher Blaise Pascal wrote, "Men are so necessarily mad that not to be mad would amount to another form of madness." For many of us, that is just a clever line, but for those living through these realities, it is the simple truth. Their struggle is not against illusion, but in a war between two realities, the one they experience, and the one the rest of us agree to call normal. And so, we must ask, what do these disorders tell us about the so-called stable mind? What do they suggest about the mind's incredible power to build and to break our perception of everything? The problem has always been knowing what is and isn't real, from within a mind that permits no entry and offers no exit. Perhaps the greatest lesson here is not to pathologize the strangeness, but to stand in awe of the mind's complexity, and to approach those whose reality has shattered with profound compassion. They are explorers of the mind's farthest, darkest shores. Their experiences, terrifying as they are, offer us the most potent reminder of all, that each of us is simply walking along a rickety bridge we call reality, and it is a long, long way down.